A very good evening to all. Let's fight. Welcome in the ring. We have a very special program this evening, a very special guest. As you know, today is budget day, and we are getting some initial reactions to the national budget. And we have with us this evening former Minister of Finance, Minister Winston Jordan, and he's going to be with us shortly. As you know, we always hold for you guys to join the live stream. We wait for that magic number to be reached, but we are set here. We're just waiting for you guys. My guest is here. He is ready to give his initial thoughts on Budget 2021. And as you come on, you know, we always ask that you guys share this live stream. Share, whether you're joining us on Twitter, that you give us your comments, give us a retweet on Twitter, whether you're joining us on YouTube, that you tubers, that you subscribe, and that you give us your comments there too. We're going to share your comments intermittently. If you're joining us on Facebook, of course, we always ask that you guys reshare the live stream. And we're going to just hold until we meet that magic number this evening. And then we're going to begin our initial reactions to budget 2020, our interrogation of the budget, and I'm very, very eager to hear what my guest has to say. I'm gonna just let him speak his thoughts, and as he often does as an academic, as somebody who is trained and experienced in the management of national economies. I'm going to take notes this evening and do as little talking as possible. I invite you guys to share our live stream on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Let's get going, guys. You know, we try not to be late here. We want to use your time wisely. We want to use our guest time wisely. And we invite you to share, invite your friends, invite your frenemy. And you know, in this program, we say you don't have to belong to APNU AFC. You can be a PPP person, WPA, CI, TCI, LBJ, whatever party you belong to. This is where we have a confluence of ideas, and we interrogate ideas, we contend with ideas with the hope that the best ideas prevail and we're able to move our country forward and develop our country. We are holding for you guys while you stream, while you share, while you invite others to the live stream this evening. We're going to hold for you guys. My guest is ready to go, and I'm ready as well. We come prepared, folks, because we want to use your time wisely. You're valuable to us. We value you. We see value in you. We see value in the time you spend here. You can be so many other places on Facebook every night for this 1 hour period, but you choose to spend the time with us, and we want to make that time as useful as possible. Folks, you know, it's been an eventful day. Let's get going, folks. I'm holding for that magic number. As soon as I see we reach that magic number at my end here, we are going to start. My guest is backstage virtually and holding for you guys. You're so important to us. We're holding for you guys to join us. Welcome again. I hope you had a good day at work, or whether you stayed home, it was a productive day. If some of you are still at work and joining us, as most of you often do, we are grateful. And we see we're creeping up to that magic number. We're going to have our guest on board just shortly. Today's budget was titled Budget 2021, theme, a pathway to recovery and economic dynamism and resilience. I think the minister with responsibility for finance took about 5 hours to deliver it. Again, you know, they like to claim it's the biggest budget and all of that, but we're going to get more into those details as we go through the evening. I think it's pegged at just over $300 billion, 383, close to $4 billion, and we are going to touch on all of that very soon. I see we're edging up to our magic number, folks, and I thank so many of you who are joining us this evening. It means the world to us. It really does. We're almost there, folks. Reshare, retweet, subscribe on YouTube, retweet on Twitter, share on Facebook, tag somebody. We are about ready to go. And let me invite our guest at this time, former Minister of Finance, Minister Winston Jordan. A very good evening, sir, and welcome.
Good evening, Sharon. Good evening to your viewers. Glad to be in the ring.
Great. I know
right? I'm not a Muhammad Ali, but I could pelt a few punches.
I know that. I know that. Thank you, sir. Again, the theme of this budget is a path to recovery, economic dynamism and resilience, and it's pegged at 383.1. They like to boast it's the biggest budget. It took a short time to prepare. Former Minister of Finance Winston Jordan, what are your initial reactions having heard parts of the presentation?
Well, let's perhaps stay with the last comment that you made about the biggest budget. You will, if you listen to any of my 5 books, you will have noted that I never use that phrase, biggest budget and largest budget, because unless you have a major catastrophe in a country, like an earthquake or a hurricane, maybe even the great floods of 2005, your budget is expected to be larger than the previous year, if only because of inflation. All right? Even if you spend the same amount of money in real terms last year, in nominal terms, when you adjust for inflation, it will be bigger. So that is not to affect anybody's cap. We didn't have any hurricane last year. We didn't have any earthquake. We didn't have great flood. COVID was out of the world and so forth. And that in any, given the truncated nature of the during year, when for a significant part of the economy it wasn't normal, then you expect the budget in 2001 should be larger, because 2001 is what you call a normal year. 2020. So I think we can get that out of the way. When you compare both budgets, 2020 and 2021, clearly shows why you need somebody of some level of competence, both academically and professionally, because you can see it in the quality of the 2 budgets, both in terms of the content and presentation. But I'm only comparing here 2020, 2021. So he clearly outstrips 𝗪𝗵ci who delivered 2020. So that kudos I will give him, and I think it was expected anyhow. I think when you strip away the revisionist history, the revisionist economic history, the repetition in some parts, and the prose, it was weighty prose, as you would have realized. This speech really tells a tale of decline in the economy, which was to be expected, right? Because in 2019 we were talking about something percent growth in 2020. This did not occur, and we knew that this was going to occur. But when you consider that the budget was presented in September 20, after, let us say, 4 months before the end of the year, and they still could not get it right in terms of the targets. Imagine you have 8 months of almost real expenditure and outcomes, and only 4 months to project. And yet, in most of the sectors, they were way off target. It just tells you a level of mismatch and poor projections at place. So that even the 46% growth that they had projected in 2020 did not materialize. And they were blaming the COVID. Now, didn't we have COVID right here? And they ramped up between September and December, where the money was pumped into the economy. You're trying to tell me that couldn't be they would have been able to project their 46% growth, but in reality, you see the growth ended at 3%. And the non-oil growth seemed to have plunged, declined about 7.1%. I must indicate to your viewers that I didn't listen to the entire speech. I think even though I'm also known for lengthy speeches, reading it and having to sit down and listen to it, I realized different things. So I couldn't sit for 5 hours listening to the speech, and that in any case I didn't have 5 hours to play with. So I was back and so on, but I was there in the early parts, and so I realized that that early part I could have made some initial reactions on. I also, as I listened, realized that this budget is in the mold of the finance minister's president. When you look at read Ms. Ali's speech of today, and you listen to Dr. Singh's speech of today, you realize both speeches are weighty and lengthy on the usual nice things to say. Mr. Ali's case is all unity, 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 unity. And in reality, as you well know, we're far from there. In Dr. Ashley Singh's case, it's all about rehashing a range of things that had been said in manifesto, said June 2020, now back again in 2021. But when you put it together, it does not gel. Yes, the parts of the speech where I believe you guys can agree in principle with. Some of the measures are indeed poor measures, and we have difficulty. But beyond those sweeteners, this is what I was looking for. I said it last year, I'm going to say it. As the first full year of the budget, they should have been done last year, but as the first full year, I was looking for a medium-term strategy, outline medium-term strategy that was comprehensive and cohesive and had some meat added to it. Not the headliners and the prose, but it had some meat that was giving you the impression that some thought had gone into it, really. But for example, what you got that we are going to resurrect the low carbon development strategy, and this will be the basis on which a so-called new comprehensive national development strategy would be developed. Now again, low carbon development strategy, national development strategy, these were all that were developed during the first 20 years of the PPP government. Neither of them went any place, and both instances, both were developed to access funds from friendly donors, essentially. In the case of the LCDS, it was to get money from Norway. It was to get money from Norway. And I think based on his speech, that essentially the of the LCDS is to approach Norway again to see if a new deal can be reached, and trying to get some other places to sell carbon credits and so forth. And while on that, I heard some very misrepresented statements being made about the coalition government had $1 billion from Norway lying down doing nothing.
Tell us about that, sir.
I believe Joe and all of them will say where that is concerned. There's a lot of representation, various parts of the speech, and a number of your sector officers in the opposition there will have to dissect it, deconstruct it. I think Pato gonna have a lot of work on his front because they missed a lot of his projects about monies being there and not being used and so on. I mean, some case where they've got monies approved from Inyo. When you go back, you will see I signed the loan back when we struggled to get those loans moving to the extent that they could get them moving. Well, kudos to them. Maybe they could tell the public what they did that we weren't doing, and they could boast about it if it sounds credible. Because I can tell you, we went even up at the diplomatic level we push this even up to diplomatic level to get those loans moving. So it must have been something more than the proficiency of our services or public services. There's also talk about use of data, which I believe must have come from this, because I remember some of the wording and some of the ideas that were being said, especially when it comes to the Statistical Bureau and the work that the Statistical Bureau has to do. I think a grave injustice done to the procurement. Can you imagine a bold-faced statement being made that they are going to restore procurement to what it was prior to 2015? I mean, none of us, let us be really fair. Go back to our general report about what happened prior to 2015. When it comes to procurement, I think it's second to none what we would have done to improve transparency and accountability to the national procurement system in this country. They talk about what, bringing back the system where let me see what's the word again, is when you don't like the award, you can appeal it. Is we brought in that system? We brought it in. You could go back to the newspapers years ago. We brought in that system when the procurement commission came into force. They took over that appeal. I remember we appointed a young lawyer in the Attorney General's chambers who was the chairman of the appeals committee. She's still there. You know, I was laughing at this story. We held numerous training courses to train evaluators, IDB, to provide assistance. We send people overseas training and on conferences in procurement. I mean, this whole thing was laughable about
very much so.
You know. But I guess sometimes, you know, you don't have much to say. You say it either in roundabout ways, or you take other people's ideas. And there were a number of projects where, again, as I said, we can do them, because there are projects that were started. There were projects that were started in our government. Linden, you talk about Linden Road as if it's your project. You know, you talk about the Linden who's like a highway improvement as if it were your project. You know, you're talking about 𝗪𝗏 Goshen, these different intermediate Samana initiatives. And go back to the last 2 or 3 projects that I presented. Now it would be in there. We are not against. I would imagine that you are not against these projects. But please, man, in the name,
but that is why we've called them recently projectives.
Transparency, in the name of answering transparency, say we will continue projects started by the previous, but it seems as if there's attempt to completely wipe out anything that was done by the coalition. Now, before I give you an opportunity to either ask or your people start punches, I want to say 2 or 3 other things. One, I haven't had a chance to study a lot of the numbers, but as I listen, and I believe any other academic or professional listening, I think I'm going to have a difficulty trying to understand the numbers. You see, the Fiscal Management Accountability Act makes it very clear that the numbers, you have to be able to provide which you arrive at certain numbers, like the revenues. For example. He says between last year's revenue measures and this year's revenue measures, $50 billion would have been taken out from the revenue. Yet still, in 2021, revenues are expected to climb by about 18%. And this at the time when you already admit the economy will, in your best projection, the economy will not be at full throttle. So I don't know where this projection come from, or how you can project to have an 18% outturn in revenues when you have to consider the full year effect of all the measures that you did in September 2020 and all the measures that you have already announced in the 2021 budget. And yet still you're going to expect revenues to go 18%, and as you claim, you're not introducing any new taxes. So I found that detailed explanation are given. I believe you're going to see a shortfall of news by the end of this year. The second point I want to raise is that the balance of payment sounds to be a bit funny also, because here they're saying that the balance of payment is able to return a surplus of $60 million plus US dollars, relative to 40 something million, I believe, negative in 2020. And he said that this was due to the ramping up of petroleum exports. We have to see that balance of payment and be able to explain whether exports of petroleum balance of payment is the entire exports, or just the exports that they have 4 or 5 shipments, whether only those are on the balance of payment. Because strictly speaking, it has to be all of the petroleum that was produced last year. It was all petroleum, as whether it belonged to Ghana. And if that is the case, then something is wrong on the other side of the balance of payment, which is the capital of capital. They will have to take effect of all the expenditure done by Exxon and to produce that oil in that, and they will have to take account of all the outflows that Exxon is taking from the production of oil, and part of amortization of their previous capital inflow that they would have made. So there's something that doesn't seem right where that is. The other thing, of course, I see the reserves gone up to 600 something million, which is perhaps far more than even what was being projected by the Bank of Ghana. We need explanation as to how, in context of a truncated period of the economy, reserves could have been by that large amount. I'm not saying that the figure is wrong or so on. What I'm saying is that not enough information was given for us to really make serious analysis of the figure of the figures, you know. And the last point I wanted to raise is that, as I predicted, the deficit for last year, announced by the was $91.8 billion. I had said it was going to be 92 point something billion based on the rough estimates I made. He said it's 91.8. And that is more or less equal to the accumulated deficit of the coalition government for its 5-year period. Can't run away from it.
Yeah.
Can't run away from it. It is equal in 1 year, in 2020. The outturn of the deficit of the central government is equal to the entire 5 years deficit of the coalition. The other point he raised was that they had to give $6 billion to GPL. $6 billion GPL in the arrears of electricity that built up on the government. Well, you know, I can't doubt that those things are but any Secretariat. Whether they owe GPL, they will tell you no. And why they are going to tell you no? Because they will say they didn't get a bill from GPL.
Yeah.
And in the government side, you can't pay without getting a bill. So, and you know, GPL is notorious when it comes to billing. Notorious. The second thing is the largest debt to GPL outside of mayor and city council perhaps is GWI. GWI probably owe GPL about $4 or $5 billion because they got a lot of pumps and so on and so forth. And you know, you're keeping GWI doesn't have the wherewithal to increase tariffs, one, and therefore a huge subsidy that GWI giving. But the government transferred that implied subsidy to GWI. And I know there was a back and forth going on between GPL and GWI about the monies that were owed, because GPL process of acquiring those generating sets that will go into operation, I think around April or May, and they didn't have it, and therefore it came to the government. So what is happening is that even as you retain these public operations, you are hamstrung them from even operating at minimum profit. Right? You hamstrung them. Right now, GPL for the last umpteen years giving a fuel subsidy. And GPL was giving fuel subsidy even when fuel prices had gone down so low. GPL was still giving fuel. Check your bill, you will see fuel subsidy. It has been there for many years. But GPL is not getting from the government that subsidy that they're giving to everybody else. So sooner or later, they are going to wipe out their savings and they are going to run into serious deficit. So it's not necessarily that they are inefficient. A number of areas that GPL is inefficient, but those inefficiencies are magnified by the hamstring of the operations because they can't get carried on. They are held down. They are held down in terms of what they can do. And so now GWI just really increased the tariffs today and GWI has to have their tariffs increased by the Public Utilities Commission. They have just, I think, got increases after a lengthy battle. But guess what? In today's budget, those tariffs now have been cut back by 5%.
Yeah.
Those tariffs have been cut back by 5%. Now, you didn't hear Dr. Singh say at the same time, and we, the government of Kenya, will be given to GWI the loss in revenue result of this 5% cut. You didn't hear that. GWI is going to be made to carry that loss. And then down the road, either they are going to come cap in hand with the government saying we broke and we can't provide quality regulation or something. But there are a lot of other instances in the speech. Over in the days coming, more of this will be brought.
Former Minister Jordan, I just want to go through some of the numbers quickly in terms of the sectors in which they are going to go from this budget. It is said that agriculture and food security, 22.6 billion. The sugar industry gets 2 billion. Rice industry getting quite a few dollars. 1.2 billion is budgeted to support the operations at 𝗪𝗵. You have 70 million for Hope Coconut Estate, a lot of millions to different places, roads and bridges, as you said. Patterson has a lot to rebut in his presentations. It's now pegged at 25.6 billion. You name it. What does, and this budget also was pegged in some earlier articles from the Vice President. He themed it as a pro-poor, pro-private sector. What does the poor take away from this budget, the ordinary Guyanese? What can they expect?
Well, there are some measures. There are some of the measures that they are directed to or targeted to them. I mean, there is the school uniform 15 increased to 15,000. I believe there is the pension increase that was announced last year. I think there's a increase in students from I think 9 to 12,000 or like that. There are no other areas that they should come. I see they remove that again. I don't see that as a benefit simply because, as you and I know, removal of taxes from whether they're food stuff or hardware or so on, rarely, if ever, passes through to the consumer. Rarely. And as a typical example, only I believe this week, the very government says they are going to meet with the Private Aircraft Owners Association to find out why they haven't passed through the removal of the VAT on hinterland travel. Get this though, we removed the VAT on hinterland travel, I believe it was in April, as part of the emergency measures that we would have. All they did in September was to confirm that removal. But they are touting it as if they remove the VAT from hinterland travel. So that VAT was removed since April. Since April. So if the travelers are still complaining that the fares are, then the VAT was removed in April, then either the VAT wasn't passed through to travelers, or as typically the case, the operators are going to say, well, no, between that time, fuel went up, spare parts went up, this went up and that went up, and therefore our prices more or less remain the same, even higher than when we had the VAT in travel.
Mr. Jordan, and on that note, as you said, several measures were taken, several taxes were removed during your tenure due to COVID and other reasons. I remember clearly too, gasoline price being dropped several times.
Yes.
We're now seeing the gasoline price, rising and rising. Talk to us about that. And Guyanese have been complaining.
Well, I made it very clear when we were decreasing the prices, that these decreases were due to lower acquisition costs. At that time, fuel prices on the world market had gone so low that at one time prices were in negative, because you have to be paying people to store your fuel. But now prices are climbing steadily, and I think at one time it had reached 60 or even gone over $60. So unless the government reduces the local taxes that are implicit in gasoline, then we can expect further increases in gasoline prices as world prices upwards. So, Sharon, you're going to park your car one time.
That looks as though where we're going. I don't get a sense, being on the ground, gauging the response to social media from this budget. I didn't find a lot of people tuned in to listen to it. That is number one. But I don't find that a lot of people are excited about this second budget more than they were excited about the first.
Well, the reason being, Sherrod, is because I should have continued where I was getting. You didn't have this comprehensiveness in the budget of the medium-term strategy to A, bring us out of COVID, and B, return the economy to some normalcy. As I indicated to you, you had a lot of platitude, a lot of statements, but you didn't see a comprehensive program. Look, take for example the COVID relief. Is it that they are finished with us now with the 25,000? Even though they claim that they have given over 6,000 households, and there's still yet a number of households that haven't got this 25,000. And those who have got the 25,000 have spent it long ago and still suffering or suffering worse at the moment. You don't hear anything in the budget as to whether this is the end of the COVID relief or whether there's a new round of COVID relief targeting only a specific set of people and so on. You get the impression that $700 million that is for vaccine is meant to solve our COVID problems. You didn't hear anything beyond lamenting that COVID has done this and COVID has done that. You didn't hear a comprehensive program that will see through COVID with the expectation of the economy returning to normal by X time, what the case may be. And during that particular period, as I maintain, yes, you see what or whatever coming off of internet. But how many people have internet? You don't see $5 billion to provide internet and everything else to all those who don't have internet. You don't see $5 billion set aside to purchase 100,000 tablets or computers for our school children who are languishing at home, and so on. You don't see that kind of program. You hear talk about 6 hotels going to start constructing in 2021. You haven't even shown people, those same people who are supposed to construct these hotels, that here is my program about when COVID is going to end, when airlines are going to return fully, and when to ramp up. Am I going to be building hotels? Why am I going to be building hotels at this time when all over the world they don't even know the tourism industry, what it's going to look like post-COVID whenever it eases or eventually. Why am I going to be building hotels? It's not that they're not needed, but I mean, I don't think private people and their monies are parted in that way.
And Minister Jordan, that is one of the things I want to pick you up on, because the last time you and I spoke, you even mentioned this whole aspect of COVID and it as being a missing element in the first budget. You said you expected an entire section to be dedicated to COVID, long-term, short-term, and
Yeah.
again, how they were going to bring us out of this whole period.
Correct. That is what I said just now again. You're missing that comprehensiveness in the budget as it relates, 1, to the medium-term program, 2, to COVID, a comprehensive program on getting us out of COVID, because that is going to continue to be the albatross on the development back of this country. We don't seem to have we have bits and pieces here. And I indicate to you, it seems as if the new medicine, the new panacea, is this $700 million to buy vaccines.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if $700 million, I don't know if they can be able to get all the vaccines. I doubt whether you could find all the vaccines in our place, 700,000 plus people. Okay, and I don't even know if $700 million is going to do it. But they seem to be throwing all their faith now, not in the hospital that we built at Ocean, where Ocean View used to be, but now in this 700 million acquisition of vaccines. You know, nothing on COVID, just statements here, statements there, but no comprehensive, no full section on COVID, no full section on what is the medium-term strategy for the development of this country. And all the eggs, notwithstanding what we have said, notwithstanding what all the pundits have said, all the eggs now to be put in the petroleum basket. All the eggs seem to be put in the petroleum basket, which is an extreme worry, because flaring is going to continue, probably get worse, right? Because piping of gas is a pipe dream until it becomes a reality. Piping of gas remain a pipe dream until it becomes a reality. In the interim, either flaring will continue because it will be extremely difficult to re-inject that gas. You could see when the compressor breaks down, which I don't know whether it's an old compressor or what, because it's now prone to frequent breakdown. Then more pollutants going to end up in the atmosphere and in our oceans. They seem to be putting all their eggs in this petroleum basket, you know, to the detriment of us. Because when you look at the deficit that is projected for 2021, it's $100+ billion. 2020, the deficit was $92 billion. 2021, $100+ billion.
Yeah.
In 2 years, it's $192 billion, my friend. That is debt that has to be repaid. And that is one of the reasons why you had the changes in the debt ceilings 2 weeks ago. This massive buildup of debt, rapid and massive buildup of debt, is going to come back to haunt us.
Minister Jordan, you said there that when there is lowering of the VAT, it doesn't come back necessarily to the consumers. I said that to say we saw in last year's budget there was nothing for public servants. I may have missed it, but what is in this budget for public servants?
Nothing again. In fact, someone just before we started, he said you should know. Because I might have missed it. Is there anything in there for public servants? I said no, there's nothing in there. In fact, the comedy errors in 2020 under the item prices and income. On the income, this is what he had to say on the income. He said, Mr. Speaker, we made cash transfer of nearly, I think, $7 billion. Then we gave more to nurses and discipline services. I think yes, $1.9 billion. And then we gave a one-off payment to public sector employees of $2 billion. Okay, and that was it. I don't know. That was it. That is not income. That is not income or is all about. In any case, the first one, about $9 billion in cash transfer, doesn't appear on the income. It appears on the transfers, because the transfers will come to the private sector, transfers to individuals that are not from government sector itself. You know, but there was nothing on the income, and the budget for 2021 has nothing on the income, and outside of increase in old age pension, there is nothing for pensioners, public service pensioners, and teacher pensioners, and so on. There's nothing there for any one of them. So if you're not 65 and over, you're not eligible to get, apparently eligible to get any pension increase. Yes, there's nothing in there for public servants, and I'm glad you raised it, because it was one of the points I have down here to raise, that once again, public servants are in for a rough ride over the next four plus years if the government rallies out to the end. They're for a rough ride. I indicated that the opposition was saying that we increase the public servant salaries too rapidly. So take your cue from that. They got nothing, and most likely they will get nothing in 2020.
I want to say this on that note, Minister Jordan, that I was talking with a representative from the judiciary who said to me that he asked a member of parliament from the other side of the house, and this was during the last budget, why there was no increase for public servants. Since in 17 years, there was always an increase for public servants every year. And the member of parliament on the other side said to this member of the judiciary that you all get spoiled.
Exactly. You know, you never miss the water till the well runs dry. You know, and
right, Mr. Jordan.
The well seems to have dried up rather quick. Well seems to have dried. But there's been know, last year. As I said, none was announced here. Not any whatsoever about public servants. There was not even a mention of public servants. Beyond saying, imagine again that the PPP government kept on workers, that they didn't knock off a single worker. Oh, wait a minute, the coalition government sent home somebody? Did the coalition government send home? Is the coalition government who had a program of in alternate days, time out, off, and different strategic approaches for public servants? They inherited that and continued it, and then suddenly abandoned it by telling all the public servants they must come back to work. You remember that? You remember that?
Correct.
They didn't knock off any public servant. They didn't knock off a single public servant when 1,000+ public servants, 1,000 servants from top to bottom. I mean,
Mr. Jordan, you said some things early on. I don't want it to be lost, because it tends to be lost that some of the measures, not only are they stealing projects and not even attributing credit to the 𝗵𝗵 government, but even some of the projects that were already in the pipeline and some of them were being executed, they are stealing. But some of even the measures that you put in place to lessen the hardship of Guyanese, and I want to quote a letter that you had written to the papers, to the newspapers, and you said, quote, obviously, the pandemic would have led to many households and businesses changing their spending priorities and patterns. Now, this is the reality of the pandemic, and government continues to work within budgetary constraints to ensure that all are able to meet their basic needs. Since March, some of the measures put in place to help citizens include tax waivers and medical supplies, deferments of payments of both corporate and individual advanced taxes and PAYE, deferred loan payments, debt deferrals up to 6 months for the University of Guyana students, grants to small businesses, and food vouchers and hampers for the most affected by the pandemic. You went on to say the government has also drafted several other measures to help accelerate post-pandemic growth, which unfortunately cannot be implemented within the current environment.
Yes, exactly. And a number of those measures they're bringing back as if it were it was their measure. They removed VAT from medicine and so on. All those things were done as emergency measures since April. And even though they were, and while there were measures for an initial period of 6 months, we put them there because we didn't know how long the pandemic would last. And so we would have reviewed them after 6 months and extend them and so on, maybe ultimately removing them entirely. It came in and was to either make permanent what was already temporary and treat it as if it was a measure of theirs, you know. And I'm glad you read those you read that out to us. Now, a number of instances, we would have already done what they are now claiming to measures that they put in. And we had this in a very fiscally restrained environment, in a very fiscally restrained environment. Now you got these cases where the only reason why they're doing it is because it happened to be in there before 2015. And you know, I saw somebody today's paper trying to answer that, write a long epistle over and over. That's the reason why I say I don't really get involved in letter writing and so on, because these zombies come out of the they end up blinding you. You know,
Like
I said there were no new taxes. The man says all these licenses that were that were increased and so on. So I went to my dictionary and I tried to find out what is the difference between a tax and a license. And if he's listening, I'll just ask him to just please go find out what is the difference between a tax. You know, and that's where my education of him is finished. Because as Kem had indicated to them, and we had indicated at the time, Many of these licenses were at 1958 values, 1958, 1960, 1970 values. So and this one, if you are going to move a 1958 that was 25, and today you say, listen, pay $20 for it, it looks like a murderous increase. And that is what they did. They said, listen, the man increased by 25,000%. So it seems as if you created blue murder. But look, either you got rid of the license entirely, or you seek gradually to bring the license, right, to one where it has some value.
Yeah.
The service that you provide sometimes is way more than the cost of this license. So you have to make up your mind about some of these things, and that's what we did. You know, that is what we did. And they run around to increase 100 taxes. I keep saying to them, we introduce a single new tax. And that is there for the record and for all. And a tax, whenever a tax becomes a license, let me know. Let me know.
Minister Jordan, one of our members of the public is reminding us that old age pension of 25,000 was announced since last year. It was to be effective January 1.
And I think
it should have gone to 30,000.
Cheryl, I think as a modern lawyer and so on, you could perhaps ask your colleague, because I think while you could announce a measure, to take effect from a next fiscal year, I think you should check and see whether the pensioners were being paid $25,000 from January. Because if they were, then you'll have some difficulty, because that 25,000 could only have been increased after the appropriation bill was passed, and then the back payment paid. But if they had started paying from January 1, 2021, then I believe it has issues. It will have issues in the fiscal act, and it's one for your work. Check on that, because I think there's something wrong with that, because they announced it last year, made it appear as if it were a measure in respect of last year, when the pensioners really and truly got nothing for last year, because the measure would take effect from this year. Similarly, they announced the increase in the uniform, I think uniform allowance or uniform grant or something, $15,000, and that takes effect from this year, essentially. You know, so that is that one you might want to take. I will take another look at it. But I once they were started January 1, I think they have some problems there, because they could not have paid the increase until after the appropriation bill was signed into law.
Definitely worth looking into, Minister Jordan. I want to circle back to another aspect of our discussion, again on the COVID issue. I have stated part of what you would have said since the last budget, but I found my notes, and you said so eloquently, Minister Jordan, and authoritatively, being who you are. The most defining public health issue of our time, and within the context of our budget, you had said one expected an entire section to be devoted to COVID. It starts what has been done so far, what has been done for the year in terms of direct relief to those who have been affected, like those who've lost their jobs, those whose incomes have declined, the vulnerable in society, like children, the disabled, the poor, and so on. Then businesses, especially small businesses. Then a program post-COVID to stimulate businesses and households, etc., to get them back out there. Then a medium-term program to right-size the economy, given what COVID has thrown out, the new ways of doing things, the work rotations, etc. Whether those things will be thrown out, or what role will technology play, and how much money is specifically being devoted to COVID. And I would have added my own bit there.
Cheryl, I mean, you've said it. It's good that you read it. I can't overemphasize that. I'm so.
These were your words, sir.
Yeah, I'm so bitterly disappointed that you keep trotting out that COVID is the challenge, and yet you do not present to the public a comprehensive program and strategy encompassing everything that I said there before, and it continues to be a source of concern. But like I said, I'm not I'm not missing the word now, but it's like to be expected. It's not unexpected, so to speak, that government forced the president now, Ashley, and a number of the ministers seem to say the nicest of things, say the right thing, right? Those catchy phrases and catchy headlines. But when it comes to substance, when it comes to details, when it comes to the comprehensiveness of strategies and so on, they all get missing. And it seems it seems now to borrow and spend, borrow and spend, borrow and spend. And that's the lamentation it will be, and we will be the poorer for it. Like I said today, what will happen to those people who are just given $25,000? Is it the end? Has COVID ended for them? Where do they stand? What about all those 1,000+ people that they now have? I was so sad to see people from St. John's Brigade and so on who have loans to pay and so on. Probably didn't even get the 25,000 up to now and so forth. Now on the breadline. What do those people do? And this 25,000, it has not reached many of the people who it should have reached. The various people, like I keep calling in Tent City, the people on the dams, the people in Success, the people in Crab Island, all these different places where you have people who have fallen out of the mainstream of development, right? Who have no yard, who have no homes beyond living on the seawall and so forth, who's eking out a living. This COVID has passed them by and will continue to pass them by, And I continue to be forever disappointed that we seem to be able to show $7 billion. I think it's $7 billion. $7 billion seem to be able to shell out, but yet we can't say that it has made an impact and a difference to who it should have been targeted to.
Minister Jordan, unfortunately, we have to leave our conversation there. You did make it to the 12th round, though, and I am better off for our engagement this evening, but I hope that we can prevail upon you to spend some more time with us in the days ahead, guiding the nation through these economic issues. As much guidance is definitely needed, sir.
Thank you, Sherrod. I'm sweating, I can barely make it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jordan.
I will be at your convenience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Folks, and there you have it, the former Minister of Finance, Minister Winston Jordan, taking the entire hour this evening, and we could have spent another 3 hours. And if it's any consolation for Minister Jordan, we had far more people listening to Minister Jordan, about 4 times the amount of persons listening to Minister Jordan that were listening to Dr. Ashley Singh present the national budget today. And so we want to again thank former Minister Jordan, Finance Minister, for joining us this evening and walking us through several important signposts in the national budget. Folks, 2 things before we go this evening. I had a visit to some of the communities in Region 3 during the course of today, and I was very privileged to meet so many welcoming folks. And I had to stop in at one of the very infamous places in Region 3 on my visit there. As you know, there's a famous $2 million project happening in Region 3, and I had to stop in to see what was happening. Very infamous place in Region 3. Trigger from the start. Just bear with me. So there I was, folks, in Belwest. Again, you know, the PUP government is infamous for the corruption, and that bloodshed there is set to cost $2 million. And the full video is on my Facebook page, so you can have a fuller look at it. The final thing before we go this evening, or the penultimate thing, the ERC wrote to me during the course of the day, stating that in December, they were written to concerning a program I had, I think on December 10th. They say that based on the relevant sections of the law, that I committed no offense. This is the ERC. They said I committed no offense. But yet in this letter, they're saying that they are strongly condemning my conduct. It referred to a reference I made to former President Jack Dio, saying that you have to chase certain folks out of your community, etc. And to this date, they haven't sent any letters strongly condemning the ERC, that is, the fraudulent Jack Dio's comments. But they sent me this letter stating, very interestingly, that I committed no crime, I committed no infractions against the law based on the relevant legislations they quoted in this letter. But yet, they are strongly condemning my conduct. I find this extremely outrageous. The letter is also on my Facebook page, Sherry David Duncan on Facebook. And as a result of the of this missive from the ERC, and generally how Guyanese have been responding to ERC, basically saying we gotta chase out the ERC now. It's a good night to all except the ERC. The ERC needs total revamping. Some of the commissioners who sit on the ERC themselves need strong condemnation for their words and actions. So until the ERC gets their actions correct, they should be the last people telling people about their condemning strongly their conduct, when their own conduct has been held in the balance. Their own conduct has been held in the balance. And folks, there is where we have it. Again, them quoting several legislation and stating clearly that I'm in breach of none of them. I'm in breach of none of them after an investigation I did not even know about. So folks, a good night to all, except the ERC. And as usual, we advise you guys to social distance, wear your mask, sanitize. No groups larger than 10, and even in those groups, social distance. We know the government ain't got time with y'all on COVID. We know that. So you and I got to take care of each other and encourage each other. Folks, COVID is real. A good night to all, except the ERC. Except the ERC. Do stay safe, folks. Do stay safe. See you guys on Monday. The weekend is before us. We'll see you guys right back here on Monday, where we intend to fight. Thanks for joining.